A fragile ceasefire in Syria's Sweida province has collapsed, with fierce clashes erupting again between Druze militias and Bedouin fighters. Dozens are dead, hundreds displaced, and local hospitals are overwhelmed as the violence spirals. Watch the full video for the latest updates, what's fueling the conflict, and what this means for Syria's stability.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Oh.
Okay, let's get into it. You've brought us this really detailed report focusing on southern Syria, specifically the Sweida province.
That's right.
Now, this is an area that, well, it was relatively calm for a lot of the Syrian conflict, surprisingly so, but now it's seeing a really deadly flare-up.
Exactly.
So our goal today is to, cut through some of the noise, try to understand this immediate crisis, where it came from, those deeper roots, and maybe most importantly, why this sort of forgotten conflict really matters.
And what's quite striking here, really, is just how fast things can unravel, how a fragile ceasefire can just completely break down and escalate into this really awful intercommunal violence. We're talking about significant casualties already.
Hundreds, the reports say.
Yes, hundreds dead and wounded. So we'll try to connect those dots today, the long-standing tensions and the immediate triggers. The goal is to help you understand not just what's happening, but why it's spiraling so badly.
Right. So let's dive into that immediate crisis. The news we're getting from southern Syria makes it clear that ceasefire in Sweida, it hasn't just wobbled, it's completely collapsed.
Totally gone.
What was meant to be a temporary truce between Druze militias and Bedouin tribal fighters has just turned into some of the worst intercommunal violence they've seen there in years.
It's intense.
It really is.
Yeah.
We mentioned hundreds dead and wounded. Clashes are just continuing to erupt across the province.
And the weapons involved aren't minor.
No, not at all. Local sources are painting a grim picture. They're talking machine guns, mortars, RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
You've got these makeshift militias digging in, setting up checkpoints, blocking roads all over towns and villages.
Mm-hmm.
And the violence seems particularly bad around places like Qanawat, Shaba, and Al-Kafr. Now, these are towns with long histories of land disputes between the communities, right?
Precisely. These aren't new flashpoints, historically speaking. There are deep-seated issues tied to these specific locations.
And the Syrian government. They declared a ceasefire earlier this week, tried to step in.
Hope to stabilize things, yeah.
But it completely failed to hold. It seems like the violence actually got worse after that announcement.
It certainly didn't calm things down. And if we look at who's involved here, it's a direct armed conflict between the Druze community.
Right, the main ethno-religious minority there, they've had some autonomy.
Exactly, a degree of autonomy in the south. And on the other side, Bedouin tribes, these are traditionally nomadic Arab communities, also with their own history and claims in the area.
Okay.
So the really critical question that comes out of this is, what actually set this off? Why now? Why such a rapid escalation in a place that was, relatively speaking, calm for so long?
Yeah, that's the key question. And to really get why this tragedy is happening now, we have to understand, like you said, this isn't just sudden. It's got these deep historical roots. The tensions between the Druze and Bedouin communities in Sweida, they go back decades. Mm-hmm. You mentioned land ownership. Grazing rights have always been points of friction, political alliances shifting over time.
All simmering beneath the surface.
Exactly. But the spark, the immediate catalyst for this latest flare-up, seems to have been a sudden spike in kidnappings.
The kidnappings.
Yes. Reports suggest members of one group allegedly abducted civilians from the other, kind of tit-for-tat retaliation over unresolved disputes.
And that's all it took?
Apparently. What started as, maybe isolated incidents just blew up really fast into full militia mobilization, street battles, the works.
But beyond that immediate trigger, the kidnappings, what really created the conditions for it to escalate so fast, analysts are calling it a perfect storm.
A perfect storm. How so?
Well, they point to a few things coming together. First, this sort of power vacuum left because state control has weakened significantly in recent years.
Okay, yeah. Assad's government isn't as strong there.
Right. Combine that with the sheer availability of weapons. The whole country is awash in them after years of war. And then you add rising regional tensions generally.
So it's just a tinderbox waiting for a match.
Pretty much. An environment where even a small spark, like those kidnappings, can just ignite a massive fire.
And while the fighting is going on, the human cost?
Yeah.
It's just devastating.
Yeah.
Medical facilities in Sweida are completely overloaded.
Under immense strain.
The Syrian Red Crescent is reporting most regional hospitals are way beyond capacity. They're short on basic supplies, blood, trauma care stuff. Just overwhelmed.
It's grim.
And inside Sweida city itself, reports talk about dozens of civilians getting hurt, stray gunfire, indiscriminate shelling. There are even abductions of people not involved in the fighting.
Non-combatants caught in the middle.
Yeah. Entire families have had to flee villages in the countryside. They're taking shelter in schools, mosques, wherever they can find that's overcrowded.
And getting aid in is proving incredibly difficult.
It is. Local NGOs have managed to set up a couple of field hospitals, which is amazing. But the aid workers say getting access is extremely limited, very dangerous. Roads are blocked. There's sniper fire.
And that brings us to the broader aid situation, which is, frankly, alarming. We're seeing a complete blockage of UN aid.
No UN aid getting through at all.
None. OCA, that's the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, they've confirmed it. No aid deliveries have reached the affected areas since fighting reignited.
And why?
They cite active conflict zones, obviously, but also government restrictions.
Government restrictions.
Yes. So what that means on the ground is food supplies are dwindling fast, medicine is running out, clean water is becoming scarce. It's a humanitarian catastrophe layered on top of the violence.
Just compounding the suffering.
Absolutely. And think about daily life. Kids are pulled out of school. Farmers can't get to their land. In some places, electricity and internet have been cut for days. That just fuels panic and, misinformation spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, terrifying. And then, as if that wasn't complicated enough, you've got reports of Israeli airstrikes adding another layer.
Right, the external dimension.
Israel has reportedly been targeting Hezbollah-linked groups, Iranian-backed militias, in the wider region, not necessarily in Sweida, but nearby.
Around the province, yeah.
Now, Israel hasn't officially confirmed any recent operations specifically near Sweida, but local witnesses. They have reported missile strikes near military sites just outside the province borders.
And the effect on the ground?
Well, it sparks confusion, fear, obviously, and it just feeds into this atmosphere of escalation, fuels all these rumors about outside powers interfering.
Which leads us straight into this really contentious point. Who, if anyone, is actually fueling the instability? Because the sources give conflicting views.
Different sides pointing fingers.
Exactly. You have, on one hand, some Druze leaders publicly accusing foreign actors of deliberately stirring things up to weaken their community's political leverage.
Okay, blaming outsiders.
Right. But then you have Bedouin spokesmen claiming the Assad regime has basically lost control and has allowed certain factions, maybe implying Druze militias, to arm themselves without any proper oversight.
So blaming the government and maybe the other side.
It's this tangled web of accusations. What it really shows is the deep, deep mistrust in the region. Everyone suspects everyone else, and there's no single agreed-upon story of what's happening or why.
So with all that going on, what about de-escalation? Any hope for things calming down?
Unfortunately, right now, there's really no sign of meaningful progress towards peace. It looks pretty bleak on that front.
Have people tried talking?
Well, community leaders from both the Druze and Bedouin sides have called for talks, yes. But that distrust we just mentioned, it runs incredibly deep.
And the recent violence makes it harder.
Much harder. Recent atrocities have made negotiations even more fragile than they already were. And the Assad government...
What are they doing? Or not doing?
Well, they've been largely silent in the last few days. They put out some vague statements about, restoring order, but actual intervention on the ground seems pretty limited.
Not really stepping in forcefully.
It doesn't appear so,
yeah.
Which leads to some serious concerns about what happens next.
Right. What are the bigger risks here?
Well, observers are warning pretty clearly that if the fighting continues unchecked, it could easily spill over.
And over where?
Into neighboring provinces in Syria. Or, perhaps even more worryingly, it could start drawing in regional actors more directly.
Like who?
Iran-backed militias, for instance, who are already active in Syria. Or maybe it could even trigger calls for international peacekeeping efforts, though that seems less likely right now. But the potential for wider conflict is definitely there.
So just to recap where we've gotten today in this deep dive, we've looked at this tragic situation unfolding in Sweida. We started with the immediate collapse of that ceasefire. The really brutal intercommunal violence between the Druze and Bedouin communities.
The humanitarian crisis that's deepening by the day.
Absolutely. The impact on civilians, the aid blockages. Then we touched on those shadowy reports of external actors, like the alleged Israeli strikes nearby.
Adding complexity and suspicion.
And we dug into those deep historical roots. The decades of tension over land and resources that underpin this whole conflict. It's just a stark reminder, isn't it, of how fast a seemingly localized conflict can just explode and consume an entire region.
It really is. And this crisis, it's really more than just a local feud, isn't it? It reveals so much about the deeper problems. You see the deep fractures within Syrian society laid bare.
Yeah.
You see the profound weakness of central governance, the state's inability to control its own territory effectively, and you see the ever-present danger of regional instability spiraling into civil warfare all over again.
A chilling thought.
It is. And while the world's attention, understandably, is focused on Gaza, on Ukraine, on the tensions between Iran and Israel, Sweida is quietly, almost silently, becoming another really critical flashpoint.
Another forgotten conflict with potentially huge consequences.
Precisely. Which leaves us with a final question, something for you, the listener, to think about. In a world facing so many urgent, competing crises, how do we actually prevent these forgotten conflicts, like the one in Sweida, from simmering unnoticed until they ignite into even larger regional fires?
Thanks for watching Global Mind News. If you found this report helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you the facts, insights, and updates that matter, straight from the source. See you in the next report.